Welcome back to the channel. Let's get caught up on all of today's latest news with Rachel Maddow.
Is all in on this Monday night. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Chris. I'm so glad you were here tonight, my friend. On stories like this, I really look forward to hearing from you. This whole hour has been phenomenal. You're so good on stuff like this. I really appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate that.
Thanks. All right. And thanks to At Home for joining us here this hour. Really happy to have you here. Do you want to start with the spy movie stuff? Let's start with the spy movie stuff. So you have probably heard the term state sponsor of terrorism. It's not a commonly used term, but the U.S. government occasionally will designate another country in the world as a state sponsor of terrorism. And what that means is not just that there is international terrorism somehow associated with that country. It means the government of that other country is, according to the U.S., using its power as a government, as a country, to sponsor international terrorism and terrorist groups. So it's always and only a very small list of countries that get this very serious kind of designation from the United States. Right now, I think there's only like 4 countries on the list. But it goes without saying, if the U.S. government has put another country on this list, if the U.S. government has declared a country to be a state sponsor of terror, goes without saying, the United States does not have formal diplomatic relations with that country, obviously. But then, for the purposes of any good spy movie plot, you have to think, well, okay, that explains what happens between the two governments. If the U.S. government declares another country's government essentially persona non grata, right, state sponsor of terrorism, obviously our government and their government are not going to have relations. But our country is not just our government, right? Our country is also made up of more than 300 million people. And you have to think, well, what would the U.S. government do if an American person, an American citizen, decided on his or her own steam that they were going to cultivate personal ties with a government like that, right? Our government will not touch a country that is a designated state sponsor of terror. But what if somebody who's just an American citizen tries to develop a relationship with that regime on their own? What would the U.S. government have to say about that? Right? Let's say you have an American citizen, a U.S. person who, surprise, plans a trip to a country that is listed as a state sponsor of terrorism. And then when they are in that country, they personally meet with the dictator who leads the government of that country. Then, while they're there, they take another meeting in that country with a radical cleric who is on the record having made a public pronouncement that he controls a network of suicide bombers within the United States, and he is prepared to activate his U.S.-based network of suicide bombers inside the United States of America at any time. What do you do if you're the U.S. government and you learn that an American citizen has done that, right? That an American citizen has gone abroad specifically to meet with the dictator of a state sponsor of terrorism country. And then, immediately after, that person meets with this cleric who proclaims himself to have a network of U.S. suicide bombers. And then as soon as that person gets back from that trip, U.S. intelligence gets a new piece of information about her. Quote, shortly after her visit, U.S. spy agencies intercepted a phone call between 2 members of Hezbollah concerning this American citizen, according to current and former officials briefed on the intelligence. The intercept was of a Hezbollah member reporting that this American citizen had met with a person whom he identified euphemistically using a word in Arabic that can be translated as the boss or the big guy. The Hezbollah member did not say the name of that person in the communication, prompting some speculation among U.S. intelligence officials as to who was being referred to. Some U.S. intelligence officials assumed that the big guy referred to a senior Hezbollah official. The American citizen denied that she met with anyone from Hezbollah, but she did acknowledge that she did meet with a variety of officials from Lebanon, including some who are close to Hezbollah. Okay, so what do you do at this point? Here's an American citizen who goes abroad to meet with the cleric who says he has a network of suicide bombers in the United States that he still controls and plans to activate when he thinks it's necessary. That person also meets with the dictator who is formally listed by the US government as a state sponsor of terror. And she's being talked about by name by Hezbollah operatives who are in conversation with each other talking about this American because they say she also just met with their big guy, with the boss, with whoever Hezbollah calls the boss. She then admits to meeting with Hezbollah-linked officials. What is the US government supposed to do with this, right? With this record that they're learning about of a US citizen? Like, from a counterterrorism perspective, what's the US government supposed to do with something like this? Oh, but wait, there's more. Because after all this comes to light, this same person then flies abroad again, this time to a European country where she goes to a meeting with a man who was on an FBI watch list. And we don't know exactly why he's on an FBI watch list. The FBI does not tend to comment on things like that, but there has been public-facing reporting alleging that this guy is connected with a Russian militia leader who has been convicted of shooting down a civilian airliner over Ukraine. He was convicted of shooting down Malaysia Air Flight 17, which you will remember 298 totally innocent civilians were killed. So if you're the US government, what do you do with this information, right? This is all the same person. Meeting with the dictator who's leading the government, that's the state sponsor of terrorism, meeting with the cleric who has publicly proclaimed himself to control the network of suicide bombers inside the United States. The same person then reportedly appears in intercepts of a conversation between Hezbollah operatives in which they say she has also met with the boss. Now she's with the FBI watch list guy in Italy who appears to be linked to this shoot down of a civilian airliner. I mean, all this same American citizen meeting with all these different people. If you're the US government, with all the counterterrorism and intelligence responsibilities that you have as the US government, what do you do about that person? Well, one thing you could do is you could make it more likely that there would be an air marshal, a federal air marshal, on any flight this person gets on. It might be safe to do that, right? It's called the Quiet Skies program. They don't have the air marshal like follow the person or anything, and there's nothing punitive about it. They just make sure that there's an air marshal on the flight if this person gets on board. That's one relatively sort of low intensity way the US government can put an extra layer of security around a person like this who has this very odd track record from a counterterrorism perspective. And again, nothing punitive, right? It's not even intrusive. It's just one way the air marshal program for US air travel isn't totally random, right? If a person with that kind of a troubling track record flies, Quiet Skies means it's more likely there will be an air marshal on board that plane with that person. That's it. It's called Quiet Skies. That's one way the US government might handle a person with this kind of a record. But it really depends on who's running the US government, right? What kind of judgment they have, what they prioritize. Because when Donald Trump returned to the White House and took over the US government again, you know what he did with this particular person I'm describing who has this particular record? You know what he did? He named her Director of National Intelligence for the United States government. The person who met with the state sponsor of terrorism dictator and the self-proclaimed head of the US-based network of suicide bombers and the person reportedly in the Hezbollah intercepts and all the rest, he put her in the cabinet. And then Trump abolished the Quiet Skies program altogether, which she had been in because of the judgment of a previous iteration of the United States government. She had been in it apparently because of her worrying and inexplicable foreign travel and foreign associations. She's not only not in it anymore, they've abolished the program and they've put her in charge of the US intelligence community. So now we, the American people, have a couple of situations at hand, right? First of all, we've got this person as Director of National Intelligence and everything that means. Less than 2 weeks ago, for instance, it meant that our Director of National Intelligence posted a bizarre video online in which she said that the, quote, political elite and warmongers are actively right now trying to bring about nuclear war on Earth. Quote, perhaps it's because, this is what she said, perhaps it's because they are confident that they will have access to nuclear shelters for themselves and for their families that regular people won't have access to. What do you mean? I mean, to be clear, this is not the YouTube comment section I'm reading on an InfoWars post. This is the Director of National Intelligence for the United States government in what appears to be some sort of official straight-to-camera video proclamation, basically telling the American people that there are secret, impenetrable nuclear shelters just for the elite, just for the warmongers. And because of that, they are, well, the warmongers and their families. And so the warmongers and the elite are planning a nuclear war. They are planning to deliberately destroy the Earth with nuclear war so they can rule the rubble from their secret, impenetrable underground cities. Or something. That is the Director of National Intelligence for a country. For our country. Which is a country that just bombed Iran. After President Donald Trump said he didn't care what U.S. intelligence said about Iran, he knew somehow from mysterious other sources, he knew that Iran was on the brink of a nuclear weapon and therefore we had to bomb them. Now tonight he says there will be a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Iran's foreign minister just moments ago said on social media that there is no ceasefire agreement. But that if Israel stops attacking Iran, Iran will stop responding. Quote, the final decision on the cessation of our military operations will be made later. So we don't exactly know what that means. We will see. But here in the United States, this follows a new national terrorism advisory alert from our government's Department of Homeland Security, which advises that Trump's decision to bomb Iran, quote, could contribute to U.S.-based individuals plotting violent attacks here in the United States. So again, if you're the U.S. government, think about what you're going to do to respond to circumstances like this, right? How do you prepare us as a country? How might you harden our defenses or try to avert any such attack, which our government, again, is now warning about? Well, again, it depends on who is running the U.S. government. And in the case of President Donald Trump, the way he has been preparing the government for this eventuality is by forcing out the head of the National Security Branch at the FBI. Don't worry, though, there's also a National Security Division at the Department of Justice. Well, Trump demoted the acting head of the National Security Division at the Department of Justice, apparently because that acting chief didn't move quickly enough after the inauguration to take down the picture of President Biden and put up the picture of President Trump. And so he was demoted out of that job. That said, the FBI also has its own specific counterterrorism division. He appears to have been pushed out. He left the FBI last month. But don't worry, there is at least one senior counterterrorism position in the United States government that has been definitively and deliberately filled by this president. It's at the Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security's domestic counterterrorism hub leads nationwide efforts to prevent targeted acts of violence of all kinds. President Donald Trump, in his infinite wisdom, has put this man in charge of that at Homeland Security. Feast your eyes. He's 22 years old, 1 year out of college with no evident national security experience whatsoever. Before volunteering for the Trump campaign, his LinkedIn page reportedly explains that his work experience includes, quote, lawn care work around my neighborhood. Also, working part-time as a clerk at an H-E-B supermarket. He also apparently once had an internship at the Heritage Foundation, and according to a recent ProPublica profile of this young man, again, who is Donald Trump's best guess at who would make a good counterterrorism chief for the United States government at this moment in time, according to ProPublica, quote, the bulk of his leadership experience comes from having served as Secretary General of a model United Nations club in school. But now that is who Donald Trump has running domestic counterterrorism efforts for the U.S. government, for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I feel duty-bound to inform you that the left eyebrow is itself registered as a lethal weapon. So underestimate him at your peril, ladies. In April, there was an arson attack targeting Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his family at the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. 4 days later, a self-proclaimed white supremacist shot up the campus of Florida State University, wounding 6 people and killing 2. ProPublica notes that he used a picture of Hitler as the profile picture for his online accounts. In May, there was a car bombing of a fertility clinic in California for somebody who ascribes to some sort of anti-natalist, bizarre extremist ideology. In late May, 2 employees of the Israeli embassy were murdered in Washington, D.C. In June, an event in support of Israeli hostages in Gaza was the target of a bizarre firebombing attack in Colorado in which 12 people were injured. Last weekend, one Minnesota Democratic leader and her husband were assassinated. Another Minnesota Democratic legislator was shot 9 times and has thus far survived. His wife was shot 8 times. She has just miraculously been released from the hospital. So it's not like domestic counterterrorism is a niche concern in America right now. Even before the new and explicit warning about potential revenge inside this country for Trump's decision to bomb Iran. But from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, where the director is off the Quiet Skies Air Marshal list herself now, and Trump has thrown out that whole program for the whole country because who cares about that stuff, where they are now unleashed at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence so the office can be on full alert for the lizard people to move their power centers into the secret underground cities, right? From the DNI to the decimation of the Justice Department, and particularly the FBI, which is now led at the director and deputy director level by 2 right-wing podcasters, to the Department of Homeland Security, where a lawn boy and model UN kid has been appointed to lead counterterrorism in every element of its responsibility to keep the American people safe. The U.S. government under Donald Trump is, I guess, doing the best they're capable of. This is the best they can do. This is your government under Trump Republican leadership, working to keep you safe. Members of the United States military were targeted by Iran today with a retaliatory Iranian missile strike at the major U.S. military base in Qatar. Nobody appears to have been hurt in that attack. But members of the U.S. military know that this president has their interests in mind in some ways, and those of their families. How does he have them in mind? Well, this is the father of 3 U.S. Marines, 2 of whom are on active duty at Camp Pendleton, one of whom is recently retired. This father of 3 U.S. Marines was beaten by masked federal agents this weekend when they turned up to arrest him at his job site. He was beaten. He was pepper sprayed, according to one of his U.S. Marine sons. They also dislocated his shoulder. His son told the LA Times that his father is 5'6" or 5'7" and weighs about 150 pounds. This was the use of force they chose against this man. Again, this man with the 3 sons in the United States Marine Corps. His oldest son said that when his father called him from the immigration facility they first sent him, his father didn't want to talk about his injuries. He instead wanted to talk about the job that he had left incomplete. He asked his son to please go back to that job site where he had been arrested. He asked his son to please finish the job that he had been working on, trimming the grass, when he was attacked by Trump's immigration agents. This is another young U.S. Marine Corps veteran in Louisiana whose wife was just arrested by Trump's immigration agents. This is a young married couple. They have a 9-week-old daughter. This Marine Corps veteran dad has been bringing their baby daughter to the immigration prison where Trump's agents are holding his wife and their baby's mother so he can try to figure out how the baby daughter can still breastfeed from the mom while Trump has her locked up. These are two young National Guardsmen in Illinois who went to the immigration office in full uniform with their mom to try to stop Trump's immigration agents from arresting their mother. This is an active duty U.S. Army sergeant who has now flown to Honduras to try to reconnect with his wife, who Trump's agents arrested while her husband is serving on active duty as a sergeant in the United States Army. The pushback against what Trump is doing to immigrants and to American families that include immigrants, it continues and continues and continues to build. This was Albuquerque, New Mexico this weekend, a really big march in downtown Albuquerque to support immigrants and to oppose what Trump is doing. This was Lawrenceville, Georgia this weekend, another large-scale march to support immigrants and to oppose what Trump is doing. This was Port Washington, Long Island in New York this weekend, where friends and neighbors rallied to demand the release of their local bagel shop manager, Fernando, who has lived in their town for decades and is a beloved part of it. This was Pasadena, California this weekend. A big protest, but one with a live band led by clergy. The local Fox affiliate covering the protest said it was a big protest, but it felt at times like a block party as it just kept getting bigger and bigger.
Mood was upbeat, but their message was serious.
I've been to 5 this week. I think the message is being heard loud and clear.
You heard the music almost before you saw the crowd marching its way down Pasadena streets this Saturday. 6 months ago, Pasadena attacked by fire. Now they say the threat is ICE, as in ICE raids on immigrant communities.
People are scared. They're in their homes, afraid to come out, afraid to go grocery shopping, afraid to pick up their kids from school. So why not be here and support them?
Joy is a part of our people's, even when we protest. We've got a joy that no one knows where it comes from, but it comes from the resilience of our people who built this country, brown and black people, and it's time for us to stand together.
The diverse crowd was organized by the National Day Laborer Organizing Network. And according to Pasadena police, who lined the route, it was peaceful.
That was Pasadena, California this weekend. The mayor of Pasadena is going to join us here live tonight. I should tell you, peaceful protests in Pasadena have just recently driven federal immigration agents out of a hotel they were staying at in Pasadena. We're going to talk about that and more with Pasadena's mayor tonight here live. We're also going to be joined here live by Democratic U.S. Senator Tim Kaine with the latest on what's going on with Iran and Congress's efforts to assert its constitutional authority to make decisions about whether or not the United States is at war. We got lots to get to tonight. Lots going on. Stay with us.
Well, there we have it. All caught up now on today's latest news with the great Rachel Maddow. See you next time. Like and subscribe. Share with your friends. I ask you guys to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you.